evolve to embrace this new understanding, we will be able to use this knowledge to create profound personal and planetary transformation. Humanity has never been alone in the universe. Our race has existed for 560 million years. Our race is relatively young compared to the many founding interstellar races of higher evolution. The original genetic construction of our race, though divinely designed, is of non-terrestrial origin. Present-day phenomena of UFOs and communication and contact with other dimensional, ET, metaterrestrial, and ultra-terrestrial beings is part of a larger story within which lives the hidden truth of the human condition. The information presented today represents part of the forbidden knowledge that has been withheld from our race by those of higher evolution. In ancient pre-recorded history, this information represented the common knowledge upon which early advanced civilizations were built on Earth, the remnants of these mythologies of our ancient ancestors. In 9,558 BC, the final civilizations of Atlantis sank, along with the memory of our ancient knowledge. Following this cataclysm, guardian races of higher evolution intervened to avert Earth's destruction, intervention that required placing the human race under quarantine. In 9,540 BC, quarantine was enacted, blocking from our race memory whatever remnants of knowledge that had remained from earlier times. It was decided by higher evolution that this knowledge would not be returned to us in full until our species had matured to an understanding of the proper use of power. The hidden knowledge became the forbidden knowledge, denied us until we exhibited sufficient maturity. This forbidden knowledge is being returned to us now, not because our masters have shown exemplary maturity, but rather because our assistance is now needed if the evolutionary potentials of our race are to be preserved. Through this knowledge, we may rapidly awaken to our ancient roles as planetary guardians, so that we may assist those of higher evolution in preserving the integrity of our planet and its life forms. The forbidden knowledge of the purposes and mechanics of our evolution represent the ancient rites of passage through which we may transform our world and ourselves, reclaiming our ancient heritage of membership with an interdimensional, multi-galactic, universal system of creation. In this workshop, you will encounter the ancient rites of passage, the personal and planetary energetic mechanics through which the hidden evolutionary potential of dimensional ascension can and will be achieved. We are being asked by the councils of higher evolution to wake up and remember the truth of our origins and to reclaim our positions as true planetary stewards. To assist ourselves and our planet through the changes that Earth will encounter between 2000 and 2017, planetary stewardship is not only an attitude, it is a science within which the secrets of creation reside. This workshop constitutes your initiation to the ancient rites of passage through which personal and global reality will be transformed. It is up to each of us to decide whether we will serve the higher evolution of our planet or whether we will unknowingly contribute to its digression. The period of 2000 to 2017 marks a crossroads in our planetary evolutionary destiny. The forbidden knowledge now represents the divine wisdom through which we may know the truth, and the truth will set us free. Please welcome his lovely wife.
Thank all of you for being so patient and waiting for us to get here. I'm going to need a little bit of help with the mylars here, and you know what, I'm going to use this London morning I don't have this presentation. I'm going to kind of go by the book or by the pack, as they say. Usually we have the chart packs available for you when you come in, but right now they're still being printed at Kinko's, so none of us have a paper copy of it. Could you put the first one up, please? Okay, let's just look. You can look past that. Ready? That's a good place to start. Now, today's workshop is called Personal Healing Through Planetary Service. And when I was given that title for the workshop, it wasn't something I created myself. And when it was first given to me, I asked, what does that mean? You know, as long as we go around and be nice to everybody, pick up garbage and things like that, you know, this is what you mean, right? Somehow this helps us heal because we're good inside and it makes us, you know, filled with love and that kind of thing. And they said, well, that too, but no, that's not what we're talking about. And I have been on an odyssey in the last week, receiving information that was relatively mind-blowing to me. It's been information on something called Merkaba. I don't know if anybody here has heard of Merkaba, but by the end of this presentation, you will know probably more about Merkaba than most people have in about 2,000 years. So that's a good thing. Now, we'll be getting into a lot of things. Some of the people are here from other workshops. They're familiar with our material, and there's some people that haven't been to any. So I've had to try to incorporate some of the older stuff into the newer stuff to bring everybody up to date so we can go on this journey together. Now, one of the first things we're going to talk about is the purpose of the New Age movement. The New Age movement has come to be probably, I think it started really about 50 years ago, but nobody noticed until about 25 years ago, and it's progressively built into a culture that mainstream culture likes to consider a fringe culture, but the fringe is actually becoming mainstream. So it's a transition that we're moving through, this thing we call the New Age movement. There's a lot of things in the New Age movement that have struck chords within us. They reminded us of our inner selves, of our spirituality, of our connection to the earth, and of our need to have those things that are lacking in our present society. But the New Age movement has done a lot more for us than we realize. The New Age movement was an engineered event, and it was engineered by beings of higher evolution that have watched over our evolution for eons. The New Age movement was created because those of higher evolution knew that we were about to face circumstances that in our present stage of development we were in absolutely no way prepared to deal with. So slowly they have been trying to create within us a consciousness, an awareness of higher things, so that if the events that they foresaw happening were going to indeed happen, we would have an idea of how to handle ourselves within those events. And I'm not talking about cataclysmic earth stages and the prophecies in the Bible where, you know, it's the end times. I am not, but at the same time I am. Not in the usual way, however. Those end times prophecies were meant to give us an idea of certain things that in the times those prophecies were given, they didn't have the science to understand. So they had to put them metaphorically. They had to put the ideas in a way that would get across to the people. You know, you say fire and brimstone and it's all going to be really, really miserable. We're going to have Armageddon. Well, people pay attention. The events that they were trying to warn us about 2,000 years ago are events that are culminating now in the next 18 years. Some of you have heard me talk before about stellar activation cycles. That was a word that I hadn't heard of last year, but I was informed of it. And I bring that information to you. Now, I keep learning more about what a stellar activation cycle is, because that's a big word, and it doesn't mean a whole lot to me. It's beginning to mean more and more. With the information that I've been given this time, it's starting to make a lot of sense. And I'm starting to get for myself an idea of how to handle myself within this. And because of that, I hope to be able to share that coming out of denial with you, where there are some things that you may be able to take home with you today, a new connection to what is really happening around us. Now, it's going to be a little hard for me because I usually work from my outlines, and I don't have an outline. It's the master copy being used at Kinko's. So I'm going to have to probably rely heavily on Phil here to keep the Mylars moving. We will cover each of these topics throughout the day. We'll start with a little bit about the guardian races. We will get into what we are preparing for, really, what this means. And then we will get into number 3, which is how does stellar activation work? This was the mind-blowing part. There is a science being presented here that is utterly awesome. There is a level of revelation that has been given to us that hasn't been here since the last Atlantean culture walked the face of the earth. When Atlantis sank the last time, this knowledge was taken away from us, but it's being given back now, because without it, we're in trouble. The knowledge I'm speaking of was hidden within something called the secrets of the singing shields. And I don't know who has heard of that or who hasn't, but if anybody is at a stage where they're tapping into their Atlantean memory, they will probably get chills from that one. Because the singing shields were the electromagnetic grid of the earth, deep in its core. They were energy fields and fields of consciousness that controlled the ley lines of the planet. There were, once upon a time, ways for us, as humans, to interact directly with the consciousness of this planet. In Atlantean times, we did. There were reasons why the old Atlanteans walked the ley lines. They were creating when they did this. They knew how to direct their power and how to amplify their power by having a communion with the singing shields. This knowledge was banned from us after Atlantis because it was deemed by higher councils and higher universes that we were too immature to handle it well. It's being given back to us now with technique and with clarity that was lacking even in the Atlantean times. For in the Atlantean times, it was made for just the elite. They're very elitist in the Atlantean culture. And those that didn't have the proper gene codes most certainly wouldn't have access to the singing shields. What is being given to us now is an opportunity that hasn't been here probably forever for some of us, depending on what gene codes we continue to reincarnate in. So if we can go to the next Mylar, we'll get into a little bit first about the purposes of the New Age movement. You can go past that. Now, when I get into talking about the purposes of the New Age movement, I talk a lot about the guardians, higher evolution. A lot of people that haven't met me and who are not used to me yet might be saying, "What's that? Give me a break. I look up there, there's nothing up there." There's some people coming from that perspective, but I think most people in this room have a feeling that there is something greater than ourselves out there in the universe. But I like to explain sometimes how our universe is structured. Because if we understand how the universe is structured, we begin to understand why our scientists, no matter how hard they try, have not found life on other planets yet. They're looking in the wrong places with the wrong instruments. If they understood the structure of reality, they would have a much better time. And they would have proven already that we were never alone in the universe. So in this part of the presentation, in the first part, I'm going to get in a little bit into 15-dimensional matrices, which in other workshops, we're going to touch on that, and 5 harmonic universes. Then we're going to get a little into matter density levels, holographic refraction, which is how the dimensional systems are created, and how our reality actually is an overlay universe within a series of others. If we can begin to understand a little bit about how particles behave within a dimensional scale, it will make much sense to us why it has been hard for us to know higher evolution existed, but also how easy it is for us to go into communion with higher evolution. They're not way out there someplace in distant space where you have to take a spaceship and freeze yourself for a few million years to get there. It's about frequency, and it's about angular rotation and particle spin, because it's all taking place in the same space. They're right here with us, but they're at a different pulsation rhythm, and their particles are at a different angle of spin. We don't see them, they don't see us, but we move through each other. And when we think of, we've taught in our workshops the process of dimensional ascension as the reality of evolution. And there's a step beyond that concept, and that's looking at dimensional ascension is actually dimensional expansion. For it's not so much that we're going up a dimensional scale, we're raising in vibration, which expands us outward into greater and greater reality fields. So right now, we're existing in a small little reality field here that we call Earth, and we look up and we wonder if there's anything out there. And meanwhile, there's lots of things out there looking down here, wondering if they're ever going to figure it out. And some of us have, because beings from the higher places, from our expanded universes, have tried to reach us in the last number of years. Those of us who are ready, those of us who listen. And at this point, there are many, many voices who have shouted, yes, we hear you. And that's good, because we need all the help we can get with what we're going into this time. Now, I'm going to show you a little bit in the diagrams. Can we flip through the diagrams a little, please? Okay, on this one, if you've been in my other workshops, you've seen this. This is kind of a standard. It'll appear in all the chart packs too, just to orient one to what I'm talking about. Now, this is a basic morphogenetic field of cosmic structure. When I talk about morphogenetic fields, I'm talking about the blueprints for manifestation. And they exist as forms of minute crystalline energy. We call it the crystal body. Every person in the room has a crystal body. Every item in the room has a crystal body. Every universe has a crystal body. And the cosmos has a crystal body. And they all exist within each other. So, crystal refers to the crystalline lattice work upon which morphogenetic fields are built. And this is the primary structure of the cosmic morphogenetic field. It is much more complex than this. This is just the beginning. There are many in-between spaces and places between places. But right now, if we can just understand that our reality is taking place within a vast scheme of universal development, we can get a little bit of reality check and orientation as to our nature in the universe. Now, this is a system of 24 15-dimensional matrices. Out here, this boundary here that I have drawn is meant to represent something called the energy matrix. That is an area of energy that is not dimensionalized. It is not broken down into dimensional systems. And it exists as a state of pure consciousness, and it is aware. It is a consciousness that we call Creator, that we call God, but it is a vast consciousness. Now, everything in the universe was created from this consciousness, is a part of it, and exists within it. There is nothing that exists outside of this consciousness. So we exist, all of us, as thought forms within the mind of God, if you want to call it that. But the cosmos is more than the concepts of God that we have assigned. It is a level of intelligence and cognition that can't even be comprehended in human terms. So we use what terms we can. But it's important to understand, when we talk about cosmic structure, and we talk about an energy matrix that holds the rest of it, we're not just talking about energy particles that have no life. We're talking about living, sentient units of consciousness that collectively form the body of all that is. And we are a part of that body, and always have been. Now, in the system of the energy matrix, there is a dimensionalized structure called the time matrix. And inside of this time matrix, there are sets of 15-dimensional systems. The time matrix allows beings who emerge out of the consciousness of Source, allows them to come in and experience individuation, individuality, experience in various levels of dimensional reality. Through coming into the time matrix, you're able to experience things like solid mass, which is really frozen light. You're able to experience time passing and movement of time. These things are not part of the reality of the energy matrix. And to try and translate the reality of the energy matrix into terms that make sense here, because of our linear orientation, is very difficult. But it's enough to know that everything exists within this energy universe. And then part of that energy universe is a dimensionalized structure, a morphogenetic field that's very, very complex, that many, many reality systems take place within. We're not alone in the universe, and we never have been, and we certainly weren't the first ones here. Now, when we get into the time matrix structures, there's primarily 24 15-dimensional matrices. This would be a singular 15-dimensional matrix. Now, consciousness enters from the unified field of the energy matrix. It enters through the 8th dimension. And from there, it breaks itself into smaller and smaller parts, so it can experience the different reality fields. Now, in a 15-dimensional matrix, we have 5 harmonic universes, each one created by a grouping of 3-dimensional bands. Dimensions go in sets of 3, and that's how we get 3-dimensional reality systems. That's what gives us the experience of externalized space and time, and a self that is separated from the rest of the unified field. Because in truth, we all exist as part of the unified field of consciousness. But when we're here to experience what being separate is like. So we come in through the 8th dimension, and parts of us end up in each of those harmonic universes. And all of these harmonic universes actually exist in one place, but at a different angular rotation and particle spin, and at a different particle pulsation rhythm. And that's what keeps them separate. But they're not always kept separate, and we're going to find out what that means in the next 18 years. Now, just to explain a little bit more about the harmonic universes within the energy matrix, the time matrix. In one harmonic universe, you have a series of time continuum. Now, there are 6 time continuum in every 3-dimensional system. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Each of those would represent a cycle of time within a larger cycle of time that would be taking place this way. So there are cycles. Time is not linear as we perceive it to be, but it is cyclic. And the past becomes the future, becomes the past in the way things really work. And it's the orientation of our consciousness that makes it seem different from that. And that's okay, because right now we're functioning on a linear morphogenetic program. So we have to try to understand in that program something that's beyond that program. So if it's a little confusing, that's okay. Now, we go on to the next one, please. What do we have here? If I had my chart pack, I could cheat. All right, matter density levels and dimensional relationships. Hey, there we go. Okay, now, over here I have a list of the basic density levels of matter in relation to the harmonic universes. In harmonic universe 1, which would be down here where we are, you have what's called gross matter density. That's the heavy stuff. It's the heavier matter buildup, the thicker particle buildup. If we go up one harmonic universe, or actually go out one harmonic universe, we will find about half the density of the matter that's here. If we saw these beings and they came here, they'd look kind of ghost-like because they vibrate higher, and then they're not as solid. They look like if you put your finger through them, if you see them, unless they want to lower the vibration and become physically solid like we are here. A lot of people have said to me, oh, well, they're not physical then. It's like, well, yes, they are. They have bodies with internal organs, they have brains, and they have DNA. I think that qualifies as physical. There seems to be a lack of understanding in our cultures because we've been conditioned for so many eons to not realize the variance in matter levels, to not realize that just because something is a little less dense than you doesn't mean it's not as sentient as you are, or perhaps more so. So science is at a strange place. Quantum theory is bringing it into a point where it's going to have to acknowledge the probable existence of other dimensional fields. But they're still a long way off from figuring out what that might mean. So the people in this room, and anybody who's been fortunate enough to have exposure to the Guardian program, I'm thoroughly grateful. We're starting off with 15-dimensional physics. So that's a good place to begin. I think we're a little ahead of the game. Now, when we get to harmonic universe 3, which would be the one in the center surrounding the 8th dimension that everybody came in on, that's where we have etheric matter density. That is even more ghost-like. It vibrates much faster than any of the lower matter densities. But there is still a world. It's more as a thought form world or a dreamscape that's very, very manageable. You can move it around with your mind very easily. When we get up into harmonic universe 4, up at E up there on the whole diagram, then we get into something called crystalline liquid light. It's a form of consciousness that I remember because once upon a time, in my last incarnation, I was fortunate enough to have exposure to the information, some of which is contained in this program, that allowed me to do something called dimensional ascension. And I was able to do something that was kind of tricky and kind of neat. I was able to go from here, up through, and expand through the dimensional system, and go back out into the 8th dimension, and back into the energy matrix. And I was able to carry a good portion of my memory with me. So when I talk about dimensions like those made of crystalline liquid light, I assure you, they're quite real. And they're states of consciousness and being that are so expansive, they go beyond every definition of love or joy or ecstasy that we could even fathom here. I know what I'm talking about. The structure of the universe that's being presented by the Guardian Alliance on behalf of the Azurite Council of the Raw Confederacy is the truth, and I know that. And you don't have to believe it, but if you work with some of the things that we'll teach you, you'll find out for yourself. Now, the last level, chromatic density in the harmonic universes, the harmonic 5. That's when we go back to being pure antimatter, not antimatter, not antimatter. It's pure radiation wave pattern. And when you get there, you are what would appear to anybody else as pure light. You're also pure sound. And you're also purely conscious. You do not lose your sense of individuation or your sense of identity. You are conscious in a way that you could not hold in a body form. So these are the things that the harmonic universes have to offer us. And this is part of our evolutionary path, whether we know this or not. We'll get into that a little bit later. Now, down here is a good diagram to explain what I said before about, yes, we are going through dimensional ascension when we evolve upward through the dimensional scale. But in even greater terms, what we're doing is going outward. You can look at the universe as a structure this way, taking place in the same space, but at different octaves of each other, moving outward. So as we expand our consciousness, we expand our body forms, we progress from harmonic universe 1, we expand our morphogenetic field, and then we are knowing as three-dimensional reality, harmonic universe 2. This is the progression of our evolution. This is something that's been hidden from our race for eons, and that's a shame. Because if we knew the plan, we'd have been out of here a whole lot faster, guaranteed. Because when you know what's on the other side, and the other side of that, and the other side of that, you realize that this is a nice place to visit, but you wouldn't want to live there. So let's go on to the next one. Thanks. Okay, now, anybody that's been to the other workshops has probably seen this going through too many times. I'm not going to go into it too much, because it will be in your chart pack, so you can read what's contained on here. This is basically just explaining a little bit about morphogenetic fields, how reality is constructed. We've talked about these great structures of morphogenetic reality that everything hinges on, but where did it come from? What's it made of? Is it tangible? Is it real? Or is it just some kind of wild concept? Well, it's not just a wild concept. The morphogenetic fields they speak about that give the cosmos its structure are composed of units of energy that are called particle, and particum. These are ultra-micro particles that our scientists have not identified yet. They are units of consciousness, electrotonal consciousness. That means they have qualities of sound and light and consciousness. And they group to form morphogenetic fields. And then morphogenetic fields pull in more of them to group to form matter bases through which consciousness can express itself. In simple terms, the units of particle group to form something called particle grids. This is where we get that crystalline matrix that I was talking about, the crystalline crystal-body morphogenetic field. It's created by many strands of particle units. The string together strands first, then the strands interweave into a fabric of light and sound. That is the fabric upon which creation is built, from the microcosm to the macrocosm. Your bodies are built on this, your consciousness is built on this. Now, over here we have the next level. After particle units group to form grids like that, they'll pull in more units of like order, similar ones that have a similar charge, and they'll build up something called chelons. Chelons are three-dimensional groupings of particle units. Then chelons form complex groupings of chelons that are chelon codes. And this is what forms and fleshes out the structure of the morphogenetic field. And from the morphogenetic field, energy is pulled in, and it follows the pattern set by the morphogenetic field. And it then builds up more particles until it manifests in matter form. within whatever dimension it's placed. And that matter form itself is consciousness. So we're dealing with the structure of a crystal body as a basis for everything, ourselves, our universe. And it's just good to understand that and to touch base with that. Because when you discover your crystal body, if you want to fix something, do you go to the symptom or do you go to the cause? Right. The morphogenetic field is the causal element behind everything. Nothing will manifest in our lives, in our reality, in Earth's reality, if it is not first in the morphogenetic field as a program of energy that will manifest into holographic illusion that we call three-dimensional reality. So if we want to be able to change and direct the contours of our reality, we need to understand where to go to do that. We can play with the outside as much as we want, but if we want to make change, an effective change, we need to go to the crystal body morphogenetic field. The things that Earth is going to be coming up on in the next number of years are going to require us to know these things and know many more things. It's not just about, gee, maybe I'll create myself a life in Tahiti and have a real nice time of it now that I know how to use morphogenetic fields. Because you can do that. You can learn to use and master your morphogenetic field and the thought form grids that you put into them so you can create a reality that you really like. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. But right now, there's a bigger reality that's before us. And this is what we're going to cover today. Because you need to understand morphogenetic fields, that they exist. If anything we say to you today is going to make sense, because we're dealing with the core structures of the planet's morphogenetic field and what's going to be happening with this in the next 18 years. Now, can we go to the next one, please? Thank you. Here we go. What are we preparing for? I don't know how many people in this room have heard me talk before about the stellar bridge alignment and the what we call an ascension cycle coming up. So we'll recap that for people who haven't heard it. We've mentioned before, too, the opening of the 7 seals. There's going to be some things coming up very, very soon that we need to pay attention to. And one of them is the opening of the fourth vortex of 7 seals. It's number 4. It's in Giza, where the Great Pyramid is and where the Sphinx is. It is going to open, and it is going to create something called the commencement of our stellar activation cycle. There's going to be a tone released from the Earth's grid, a harmonic tone, a vibrational resonance, that is going to create a magnetic reaction within the solar fields. It's going to begin the process of bringing a stellar bridge of frequency down from the higher dimensions. And this is going to create many, many changes here. And with the opening of Giza, there's also some problems. There are certain factions in the universe who are trying to stop this process. I haven't been told a lot, but I'm getting pretty sensitive to when I'm being censored. Now, the Guardian Alliance is always very open with me, unless they think it will upset me. Because I care very much about people, and I care very much about this place, and I take my work here very seriously as a representative of the Guardian Alliance. They have given the information that you'll see today, the more advanced stuff, because they think we need to know this. If everything was hunky-dory, as they say, we wouldn't need to know this, because they wouldn't have to ask us for help right now. They're asking us for help and providing the information that they will provide. So we'll talk a little bit about the stellar bridge. We'll talk a little bit about grounding the stellar bridge. We'll talk a little tiny bit about Illuminati interference, but I don't like to focus on negative things, because where the thought goes, energy flows, and it remanifests itself more. So my idea is not to put a lot of attention on the negative forces that are trying to interfere with these processes we're going through, but simply to create an awareness of them so they don't sneak out and do something that you would not want. Now, at a high level of consciousness, you wouldn't manifest that reality anyway, but if you were at that level of consciousness, you probably wouldn't be here. So it helps to know a little bit about what the other side is doing and how to approach that in a condition we call Christ consciousness. Because in the second half, this afternoon, you're going to find out some things about Christ consciousness that I bet you never, ever, ever knew before. And it's really exciting. Christ consciousness is a real thing. And you don't have to be a Christian to be a part of it. Because a lot of the Christian people feel that, Christ was just theirs. Well, no. Christ was symbolizing something much, much higher. We'll get into that this afternoon. Right now, I'm going to get into the stellar bridge alignment. Did you change something? Now, if anybody had this graph from last time, you'll notice a drastic improvement. The other one I had scribbled together, I think, sitting out on the steps the night before, because I always seem to be on this mad dash trying to get these presentations ready in time with all the written material. So, now, this diagram shows, and it's still not perfect, but it shows the basic concept of a stellar bridge. Okay, normally, when we are in a regular cycle that is not an ascension cycle or a stellar activation cycle, there are something called Merkaba fields or Merkaba spirals within the harmonic universes. They're basically spirals of counter-rotating electromagnetic energy. Okay, the Merkaba spirals spiral around this way, and this way, and their vertical axis cross through each other sometimes. But most of the time they're spinning past each other, where they don't align vertically. In a stellar activation cycle, they're at that space where if you move things in a circular motion with axes around long enough, eventually those axes will touch for a while. There's a synchronization that I don't understand, it's very mathematical, to the way the cosmos is structured and to the way a 15-dimensional universe is structured, that there are certain times when the vertical axes of the Merkaba spirals come into alignment. And it creates an opening passage between all of the harmonic universes. And this is what is meant by a stellar activation cycle. When this happens, the natural magnetic repulsion zones that keep these universes apart begin to open. So you get a dimensional blend, you get a time continuum blend, and you get a lot of visitors from other places that you didn't know existed because it's easier for them to come through. And that's what's happening now. So with the stellar bridge that is going to be aligning, there are going to be conditions that we have not experienced here in our recorded history. The stellar bridge can align once every 26,556 years, but only if the particle pulsation rhythm at Earth's core is high enough. If it isn't, the Earth's magnetic field literally seal out the stellar bridge, because if the particle pulsation at core isn't high enough and that bridge grounded, it would explode the planet. So there's a natural protective mechanism built into the way the universe is structured, that only things that are of compatible vibration can open up to each other. And that applies to the stellar bridge of the Earth. Well, this time, in the year 2017, we are at the center of a time continuum cycle. There are only two times, primarily, that we can experience the alignment of the stellar bridge in an ascension cycle. One is at the beginning of our time continuum, the one we're in right now, the sixth continuum of the third dimension, and one at the middle. We are approaching the middle of this time continuum in 2017. The guardian races have known this for over 26,000 years. This was the next chance for humanity to experience something called dimensional ascension. It was a chance for the people who have reincarnated down here over and over and over, because they have lost their evolutionary blueprint, because they have lost the memory of what this evolution was about, and they have lost the DNA that went with that memory. These periods of stellar bridge alignment are an opportunity for us to remember, to get our DNA back, and to get our memory back, and to learn the mechanics how we can move out of here into the next level of evolution. So the stellar bridge aligning creates conditions of great opportunity, but also great consequence. There are things that happen in the stellar activation cycle that we have absolutely no recorded history of. The Atlanteans had a little bit of that, but even they didn't have the whole understanding. They've lost track of that too, because this thing doesn't happen very often. Now, I'm going to get into the dynamics of what exactly is going to happen. And by the end of that, we're going to understand what it means to enter Merkaba. Because it's not just something you do with your own body's energy fields, creating Merkaba. The planet is going into Merkaba. And when that was told to me, I thought about that. And I said, that means it's doing breathing exercises to make yourself disappear, right? Because that was about my level of understanding of Merkaba. He said, it's a little more complicated than that. We'll explain. So they did. And page after page after page, they did. Alrighty. I'm going to go over the dates a little bit here. In the stellar activation cycle, what happens is these Merkaba spirals progressively align. They don't all align at once. They align in sequence in a vertical axis. The solar activation, which is when the fourth dimensional Merkaba spiral connects with the third dimensional one, actually it connects with the first dimensional one, but starts to bleed between D3 and D4. That's going to take place between the year 2000 and 2004. What that means is there will be fourth dimensional frequency progressively moving into the planet's grid. Now, in the last presentation that I gave, it was called Coping Skills for the stellar activation, because there are things you need to know of how to raise your frequency and how to prepare your body for these extra energies that are coming in, because there will be consequences. And depending on how your gene code is right now, will depend on how those energies will affect you. In this particular presentation, we're not going to talk too much about that right now. We're going to talk about something in the afternoon that will override having to worry about the whole thing. But for now, we're going to understand what we're going to walk through. Because if we understand that, then we'll understand the significance of what we can do that is so very simple that will make it all okay again. Now, in 2004 to 2008, we have something called the Pleiadian activation. They give them names of the different star systems. Because the Pleiades, for instance, has consciousness abound on fifth dimensional frequency levels. So and there's also connections between our morphogenetic field of the planet and the Pleiades. But they associate the Pleiades with the fifth dimension, Sirius with the sixth dimension, Arcturus with the seventh, Orion with the eighth, Andromeda with the ninth, and then the Lyran systems go up from there. But the most important thing to understand simply is the dates that are involved here. These are not some wild prophecies that we're going to sit around and watch not happen. In fact, we wouldn't be able to sit around and watch whether they did or didn't happen. It's not going to be something that's going to burst itself into the sky and say, hello. It's not a fathomable prophecy. It's not, the world's going to explode. These are very subtle but very distinct electromagnetic changes that are going to be moving through you, through the planet, through our consciousness, even through the Illuminati and the intruders who are here to mess with us. Now, in 2012, at the end of what they call the Syrian activation, we're going to go through a period of 3 days. That's going to be actually we have 5 years between 2012 and 2017. We progressively moved into a period of hyperstellar activation. In a period of 3 days, we go through 3 of them, where it took us all these years here to go through the first series. That's going to create something called particle conversion. That's when the planet is going to enter its last phases of Merkaba. Now, Merkaba is going to be discussed very soon, from the beginnings as to what it really is and how it's built and what it does, to what it means to go into these phases in relation to the dimensions. So I just want you to get an idea of the time frames we're working with here. And we're not joking, and the Guardian Alliance would not be giving you this information if they didn't think you needed it. We go on to the next one, please. Okay. Okay. Now, this is a chart that anybody who has my book, this is from the book, but it's a chart that shows the 7 primary vortices of the planet. The vortices are the chakras of Earth. And there are 7 primary ones. There are 6 in planet and 1 that links actually into the harmonic universe 3. Because of the stellar activation cycle, these vortices are going to open. And in a little bit, when we get into Merkaba mechanics, you'll have more of an idea of why that happens. But these are the 7 seals that were prophesied in the Bible. When you read the Bible, in Revelations, it's really kind of scary what they say about them. It's like these horrible angels come down and like give plagues and locusts and all sorts of nasty stuff. I'm not really sure why it was worded that way. I think it was trying to acknowledge some of the problems we could go through if we were not prepared for a stellar activation cycle, and it was put in a grandiose context. What's going to happen when these seals open is going to be frequency comes in from the higher dimensional fields. And what that frequency does to us will depend on the orientation of our bodies, and our bodies depend on the orientation of our consciousness. So it all comes back down to consciousness, our own and the planet's. Okay, I'll just you can go over the dates real quick if you want. Yes, thank you. Thanks, I'll have my waist back here. Okay. All right. Now, in January of 2000, we're going to experience the opening of the Giza Egypt 4th vortex. That's going to begin the process of the Earth literally moving out of its present time cycle into 4th dimensional time cycle. It's going to move further than that too, as we'll see when we get into Merkaba mechanics. We're going through a time shift. Part of it's natural, and part of it's guardian assisted. We'll talk about that in a little bit too, the assistance that was given here. Now, we don't have a whole lot to worry about right away with the opening of the 4th seal. The first 3 have opened, but they only help to circulate the third dimensional energy through the Earth. Earth is composed of dimensions 1, 2, and 3. It's used to be 1, 2, 3 frequency. But now, the 4 frequency is coming in. You can remember the diagram I had where instead of watching the vertical climb, you can watch the expansion outward. Well, Earth is expanding outward into harmonic universe 2. Every planet here, every being here, has a counterpart of itself in each of the 5 harmonic universes. Earth's counterpart is called Tara in harmonic universe 2, and Gaia in harmonic universe 3. And beyond that, they're not really planetary bodies, they're crystalline liquid light swirls of consciousness and those kinds of things. So we're just going to worry about Earth, Tara, and Gaia. In the next 18-year period, particularly during the 3-day period in 2017, Earth is going to expand into becoming Tara, and Tara Earth is going to expand into becoming Gaia. And after that, they're all going to expand to momentarily become crystalline liquid light. They're going to enter hyperspace, and we're going to go with them. And this can be a process that is joyful and wonderful, or it can be a process, as our ancient ancestors about 200,000 years ago found out, it can be a disaster. It comes down to what I mentioned before, the secrets of the singing shields, because they hold the key to how an ascension cycle will progress. They hold the key to building the Merkaba body. And if we can understand how this happens in the planet, you will be able to understand exactly what your process is. It's the same thing that the planet goes through in its cycles of evolution. It's the same thing that a human soul goes through. And the process I'm going to explain to you in relation to what's happening with the Earth, its grids, and its expansion into Terra and Gaia is exactly the same process that we're going to be going through as we expand into first our soul matrix and then our oversoul matrix, because we have portions of our identity in harmonics as well. The processes of the planet and the people are precisely the same. Ours are just done on a little bit smaller level. Okay, let's go on to the next one. I should probably just read this to you. Since you can't cheat and look at my notes, I'll stand back here. Let me see what the most important parts are. All right, this is where we get into the activation mechanics. What is really going to go down here? And some of this is utterly mind-blowing material. I've literally been up all night putting together charts and graphs to try to help you conceptualize this and help myself conceptualize this. But it makes sense. And I think we got the graphs and charts down pretty good, where you can understand some of what's going to be taking place. Now, first we're going to talk about, and I'm so excited about this because it's been so long since we were allowed to have this information, the science of the singing shields. Once upon a time, humanity and Earth had a lovely relationship. The consciousness of both understood each other. And there was a tremendous bond between the human and the planetary consciousness, a reverence, respect, and the planet in turn gave back. There are ways that our bodies can be used to draw energy directly from the Earth's core, to use for whatever we want, for healing, for manifesting. There's only one rule. It's supposed to be done nicely. We're supposed to do it in a way that's conducive to not only our own evolution, but the evolution of all other things too. It's supposed to be done with love. Once upon a time, we had access to the singing shields, and it was a gift. It was a mutual gift. We helped Earth evolve, the consciousness of Earth, and it helped us evolve. And I remember those times. I remember being part of one of those civilizations. And when I talk about it, it almost brings tears to my eyes. Because when, I didn't remember what was missing until they gave me the information on the singing shields. And with that information, the memory came back of what it used to be like to be in a love affair with the planet. And what it used to be like to have a connection to every other being on this planet. And it was a time when people loved each other and cared for each other. We operated as a human family that was part of a larger family, intergalactic families. The secrets of the singing shields, I hope, will strike a chord in you like they did in me. We'll be doing a meditation at the end of this dissertation on the singing shields and the other fields. But I hope that before that, maybe it'll jog some of your ancient memory to remember that time and that place when we were at one with the Earth consciousness and it felt good. Because we can recreate this again. And with the things that are coming up, in the next 20 years, 18 actually, we need to create this again. The Earth needs our help. And we need our help. Because if we ignore this, it could get very, very uncomfortable. Okay, now, I'm going to read this to you, and it will probably sound very strange, and then we'll go into explaining the words that make no sense right now. We'll go into the singing shields and Merkaba spirals. Basically what's taking place is, and this is the Guardian's words, this is their transmission. Earth will enter hollow phase Merkaba vehicle between 1/1/2000 and 1/2012 with the release of star seals and vortex seals 1 through 6 and activation of the Terran shields. And they got right there and I said, what are you talking about? So they went on to give me the next section that I'll go into right now. We'll deal with the shields first, because to understand any of this, you're going to have to know what a shield is, first of all, what it does, what it's supposed to do and not supposed to do, and then how it applies to you as being on the planet. So, here goes. Okay, the science of the singing shields. Now, these are very good definitions here. First of all, pretty simple. The shields are part of the morphogenetic structure of Earth, Terra, and Gaia. They're part of the crystal body of the planets. What the shields really are dormant scalar grids. Now, a scalar grid, or a scalar field, in terms of the Guardian's definitions, I'm not sure what contemporary science defines scalar waves as, but I know the Guardians do. Scalar fields are fields of sound, the morphogenetic fields, that are created through fixed points of frequency, frozen sound. When that sound is unfrozen, it jumps into life and forms a wave pattern. And that wave pattern is a standing wave pattern. It's not a wave that moves, it's not a carrier wave, it's not a particle wave, it's not any of those other kind of waves that we're more familiar with. It is a wave that simply stands and holds its energy. That is a scalar wave. So a scalar field would be a field of those waves. And that's what morphogenetic fields are when they come to life. They're either actively, with their consciousness moving through them, with their flames burning, or they're dormant as crystallized sound tones. When it comes to the shields of the planet, we're talking about grids of energy within the morphogenetic body that are frozen points of sound. During stellar activation cycle, they come to life. The shields light. And that allows for wave patterns between Earth, Terra, and Gaia to begin magnetically drawing the planets toward each other. But we don't get drawn toward each other and crash. We get drawn toward each other and merge. Because in truth, everything is made of sound and light. It may appear solid, but it really isn't. It's energy. Now, solidity comes from the differences in angular rotation of particle spin. Right now, Earth, Terra, and Gaia have different angular rotation and particle spin, and they pulsate at different rhythms. So, right now, they are physical compared to each other. So if they came together in that state, they would crash, and we'd all be in trouble. But the universe is much more wise than that. It doesn't create that kind of structure. It created a structure where, during stellar activation cycles, the angular rotation of particle spin between first Earth and Terra, and then Terra and Gaia, come into the same axis angle, which allows the particles here to begin pulsating at the speed of the particles there. So there's a literal merger of the molecular bodies of the planets. And that can create all sorts of very strange things to walk through. Now, when we get back to the shields can be understood. When I see them, I see kind of like a flat ring with little flames on it. And I know, working with my own auric field, we also have shields in ourselves that can be activated, and they're dormant right now. When we do Merkaba exercises, we're activating our shields, is what we're doing. And I have seen what the shields look like from a distance. I was shown once what it looks like if you were a few million miles away from a shield, like a planetary shield where you're not in the planet, where you can't see it. You were away from the planet in a different octave, so you could see it. They look like a mandala of light. And they're beautiful. They're very intricate movements of light, geometrical shapes and movements. And they're circular. So when I think of the shields, I think of 3 circles of light and sound that looks pretty. It's real simple to understand it that way. They are scalar grids that hold the morphogenetic field of our planet, of Terra, and of Gaia into their harmonic universes. They work as locks that keep the particle base here. But when they activate, they work as stargates that change the way particles relate to each other here so that we may pass through into other harmonics. Now, how was it explained to me? These are the words. This is how the guardian lines explained it to me. They said during ascension cycles, the frequencies of the stellar bridge coming down strike the planetary shields that are dormant, and it brings them to life. The sounds that come down, the sounds that we don't hear, they're inaudible frequencies, that come down through the stellar bridge, interact with the shields and the morphogenetic structure of Earth, and stimulate their dormant tones and release their fire. Now, it's not fire that's going to come up and burn us, not exactly. It's energy. So there will be more energy coming into the planet. The shields are activated. And the shields are very, very special. The ancient secret of the shields is that if they were activated properly, they could allow for dimensional ascension. Someone who mastered the art of the shields could create a Merkaba vehicle. A Merkaba vehicle is a vehicle of light and sound that will allow, it's something that forms around you or around the planet that has a very specific configuration of wave patterns and wave flows, and very certain specific configurations. The wave flows in one's auric field, or the planet's auric field, can actually pass through magnetic repulsion zones between harmonic universes. And if you can pass through those, you're on your way up to what they call metagalactic core, the 8th dimension. There's a stargate there that leads back to the energy matrix. And believe me, it is there. I remember. And I was darn lucky to get that far. The process of evolution through dimensional ascension is so wondrous and so beautiful. And it has been denied us. It has been something that has not been taught to us for so long that we forgot what it is. Well, we're in for a quick reminder, because we might have forgotten, but the planet remembers. And the planet is going to go through a phase of its evolutionary process through dimensional ascension. Planets don't ascend all at once. They ascend in something called morphogenetic waves, where the highest vibrating particles during stellar activation will shift into the higher harmonic universes, and the lower ones will go back into their time continuum and keep evolving. So we are approaching a time of shift like that. Morphogenetic waves are going to be released. What is that going to look like to us? What do we do about it? I mean, great, so the planet's going through all this stuff, and like, I have to worry about going to work in the morning, and what am I going to feed my dog when I get home, Like, what do I do with my dog? Like, what do I do with my daughter when she tells me she wants to go to college in California? Is it going to be there? I worry about these things sometimes, and the guardians know it, because they're telling us these things. They're telling us about these phenomenal energy mechanics that are going to be taking place. And it's like, okay, keep going. What now? What do we do? What do we expect? What we will get to in the end of this workshop will be an understanding of what we can do in relation to these things. And what we can do is make a huge difference in the outcome that we'll see by what we choose to do with our consciousness now. Now, let's see if there's anything more on this sheet I need to point out. Okay, here we go. Here's a connection here that's worthy of pointing out. All right, we have the stellar bridge coming down. That interacts with the shields. Okay, the shields activate. Now, the shields activating progressively release the seals, the frequency seals, and their 7 primary vortices. Vortices work like chakras do on the body. They keep the various dimensionalized level of the body's particle base phase-locked, or locked into the specific pulsation rhythms and angular rotation of particle spin of dimensional bands. So, when chakra seals release, or when primary vortices on the planet release, what is happening is the phase lock and the dimensional lock is releasing. So particles can do something new. They can expand. Now, so we have a relationship between the shields now and the vortices. As these vortices open, the planetary shields come together. We had Earth, Terra, and Gaia's shield. They would progressively be moving to form one shield. And that creates a progressive movement of Earth into first the harmonic 2 time cycles, and then the harmonic 3 time cycles. That's a progressive movement of Earth into a less dense state of matter and an even less dense state of etheric matter. It moves upward and then it comes back down again. So it expands outward into these levels of the harmonic universes. And then at the end of the stellar activation cycle, it comes back in again. But in that coming back in again process, some of it got left in the Gaian fields. The highest particles, or the people with the highest consciousness, will be able to ascend and know themselves as being on Gaia. People in the middle range would go to Terra. And people with your average 3-dimensional consciousness would come back here to continue their evolution until they could expand and stay there. Because we'll all get a quick jolt during this stellar activation cycle. We're going to get a rapid firing of our DNA. We're going to get some extra consciousness given to us really fast as part of our soul matrix and bodies. As the planet goes through these phases, some of us are going to have to go through these phases too, if your DNA can handle it. So we're going to get awakenings. There's going to be spontaneous awakenings happening to people, where they're going to be like, all of a sudden, like, I just get it. I'm a soul. I know this, and I've had those, so they really can sneak up on you, where you're just not thinking about anything at all like that one day, and it just, out of nowhere, hits you, and you feel so good. And then about, 20 minutes later, it's gone again, and Where'd it go? It comes back again, and then it sticks a little longer the next time until you fully embody that level of consciousness. But we'll be moving into some expansions of our own consciousness as the consciousness and the planetary body of the planet expand. Okay, let's see. Now, it's converging in the planetary shields, so the shields are coming together. That pops open the vortices. This creates the condition known as Merkaba. And this process is exactly what's happening in our bodies when we attempt to initiate the condition of Merkaba in our bodies. Just like the planet has star crystal seals, which hold its angular rotation of particles spin into phase lock, and seed crystal seals, which hold its particle pulsation rhythms into phase lock. Planets have it, our bodies have it. These things are controlled. The crystal seals are controlled and part of the planetary shields. And our morphogenetic seals are part of our shields. And mastery of the shields would give you mastery of your chakra system, or mastery of your Earth's vortices, and that will allow you to knowingly create a condition of Merkaba, which is conscious modulation of your energy fields to create a light vehicle that you can move through dimensions with. Okay, so we're going to get into, now I know a little bit about what the shields are. What's a shield? Anybody want to answer that? I want to see if any of it's stuck. Anybody want to answer that? Hey, there we go. Okay. We got a standing scalar wave. That's close. It's actually a group of standing scalar waves. Okay. Does the concept of the shields make sense? Because if it doesn't, I'm going to keep going because it's important, and I need to get this across. How many people have a little inkling of the importance of the shields? That's good. That's a good percentage. Okay. The significance, from my understanding, the significance of the shields is A, they control the planetary electromagnetic grids. Through them, you can move planets through dimensional universes. We're not worried about learning how to do that right away. We're just learning about how to survive it when the planet's going to do it on its own, because that's what's coming out. So the shields play a significant role here. It's easy enough to understand if you had 3 disks, one disk in each harmonic universe, and those disks were simply coming together. It's like taking 3 posters that you set your glass up, and you have them strung out this way, you just put them all back down together this way. It's an easy way to understand how the shields work. There's a lot of complexities in shield mechanics. But the basic concept is simple. It's taking something that's divided into 3 parts and moving it back into one through a little disc at the center. So Earth has a shield, Tara has a shield, and Gaia has a shield that are connected to other shields that are stargates within the higher universes that we don't need to worry about right now. The shields control the particle base of the planet. They control what angle the particles will rotate on and how fast the particles will pulsate. If we're going into the stellar activation cycle, it becomes very important that the particles of the planet are able to increase their pulsation rhythm, because if not, the planet would be shattered. So the shields are significant to the point that they are the life and death of the planet. If the shields are operational and functioning the way they're supposed to, the planet's alive now, and it continues its billion years of evolutions through dimensional ascension. But if the shields aren't working properly, and if the shields happen to misalign during the stellar activation cycle, then things like pole spin happen. And it's not just the polarity of your electrons, it's the polarity of the physical planet as well. The last time, 216 years ago, was the last time that the shields began to merge in a stellar activation cycle. And during that time, there was Illuminati interference. Illuminati go by many names in the universe, but they are basically the ones that like to hamper evolution. Mm-hmm. They are working for... Yeah, I hate the term adapt though. I try to find a more kind framework to put it in because they're part of the whole picture too. But they're working against the law of one, let's say. That's a good word. Unenlightened. Unenlightened. That works. But I just call them the Illuminati because there's a whole family history that goes with that way back up into the Avatar levels that I won't get into this time. But anyway, when the shields came together before...
A source of contrast.
Yes. Yes, they are definitely a source of contrast. That's a good way to look at it. I like that.
And it can be called also a shadow government too, or part of the Illuminati?
Now, when the shields came...
Huh?
That's a good one too.
Anna?
You know what? I think I'm just going to move on. Yeah, I know people are starting to ask questions here, and if I take questions right now, we are never ever going to get to the end of this material. And if you don't get to the end of it, you're not going to know why it was worth studying through this much of it already. so I will reserve a time for questions at the end, and I'll be glad to answer everybody's questions. But if I answer one that's going to get, it kind of gets crazy. I've done that before, and I've learned my lesson. Okay, so I want to finish talking about the shields so we can go into Merkaba mechanics. Because through understanding Merkaba mechanics and having a few techniques to play with, you can really amaze yourself. You can start feeling things in your body and in your consciousness that you didn't even know you would feel. You can start learning to build a body of light sound that's shaped like a star tetrahedron, which you have anyway. It exists in your field. But you can learn to activate it in a way that allows you to go through a stellar activation cycle unscathed. If Earth was going to go through a stellar activation cycle right now with human consciousness and human bodies at their present rate of vibration, everybody would be incinerated. Because our bodies and our genetic fields right now cannot hold the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, all the way up to the 15th dimensional frequencies that are going to be coming down here. We would be vaporized. Usually stellar activation cycles are synchronized with the evolution of the consciousness on the planet. And usually the planet will not open to receive a stellar bridge until its life forms have reached a certain level of consciousness. When they start to go into 5th dimensional consciousness, where the 5th dimensional consciousness is the beginning. We started to pass into 4th dimensional consciousness. We've done it. We've been doing that in the last probably 200-year race cycle. We've been starting to move in that direction. But the frequencies of the stellar bridge are bringing a lot more than D4 frequency here. They're bringing it all the way up, primarily to the 9th dimensional level. That's going to be running through our core. The Guardian races knew this, and they knew that we wouldn't survive. And there was a time when they thought that they were just going to allow evolution to do what it does, because it's always recycled. If you lose your memory and you get your morphogenetic field fragmented and end up as space dust for a while, you still exist within God. You're never separate from God. You just won't know you exist within God. And it will take you a long time to build up a form that will hold the kind of memory where you can have sentient co-creative identity with Source. So the Guardian races decided to intervene for numerous reasons. They've been creating something, and this is a little term that's around in the New Age movement a lot, the artificial Christ consciousness grid. What's that? That was my first question. Okay, first we have to know what Christ consciousness is before that's going to make any sense to me. Basically what they said was it's a band of energy that has been formulated around and through the planet, through its morphogenetic fields, that will serve as a buffer as we move through the stellar activation cycle. We will still have effects. Our DNA is still going to activate. We're still going to be subjected to possible molecular compaction, which is a condition of morphogenetic field breakdown because too high frequency is pressing on it, which creates a more rapid deterioration of the physical body. If we work with our DNA, we can avoid these things. But at least, because of the Christ consciousness grid, they call it that because it has something to do with the level of consciousness that the one we know as Christ symbolized, at least we won't turn into space dust, which is nice. It was very nice of the Guardians to intervene. And it means somebody cares about us up there, out there through there. It also means they care about themselves. Because in truth, most of the Guardian races that are involved with us here are ourselves. at higher octaves of evolution. They're our future selves. So of course they care if we get incinerated. That means it will affect them. It will affect their ability to evolve. So they're very committed to the deal. Yeah, they'll help us. But it is also because we are loved. Excuse me. All right. Now, can we go to the next one, please? Okay. Let's see. All righty. Merkaba spirals. Understanding Merkaba fields and Merkaba vehicles starts with understanding the basic Merkaba spiral. Okay, a Merkaba spiral is a set of counter-rotating electromagnetic fields. They form the shape of the star tetrahedron, which is like two pyramids put together. It would be that shape up there at number 1. That would represent a dimensional Merkaba spiral. And in each dimension, every form has a Merkaba spiral that links it into that dimensional band. The seals that I talked about before, the star crystal seals and sea crystal seals, they're morphogenetic seals. They put the morphogenetic field locked into a dimensional band. And what the dimensional Merkaba fields do, they spiral energy from the unified field of the dimension into the morphogenetic field, building up its particle base and expanding it. And this is how things evolve through time, through the Merkaba fields, pulling energy in from the unified field of the dimension into the forms, and that expands them, and they evolve. So the Merkaba spirals are very much a part of the intrinsic nature of how reality is structured. There's small ones and there's larger ones. The dimensional ones are the smaller ones, and we each have them. We each have 3 within our 3-dimensional bodies, actually one surrounding it and 2 are within it. And we'll get into that a little bit later when we get into personal ascension mechanics. Right now, I want you to understand what's happening with the planet. Because if I get you through that, then you'll get it when it comes to what's happening with you. Sometimes it's easier to understand the big picture than to get lost in the little details. And sometimes it's easier to understand something if it's not so close to your face. So when we deal with ourselves, when we deal with the little microcosmic world of our own self, this is my reality, my personal stuff, it can be too hard to see the forest through the trees. So we're trying to give you a bird's eye view on what's happening in an impersonal way. Not as personal because yours is personal, but not as personal as you directly. But these processes that I'm explaining apply directly to your consciousness and to your body, to your DNA. Just like the planet has Merkaba spirals, so do you. Now, we'll explain a little bit more about them and how they work. Okay? There are dimensional Merkaba spirals, as I've mentioned, they're in each dimension. And then there are harmonic universe Merkaba spirals. These are the spirals that are larger than the dimensional ones. I can illustrate that over here. Okay, in the harmonic universes, there would be one primary Merkaba spiral for a form. Now your form will have one, the planet will have one, the galaxy will have one. But it will be half of another one. Where in the dimensional Merkaba spirals, they tend to be attacked with electromagnetic. The electromagnetic is broken down, where only at certain times do they form the full star tetrahedron shape. Now in harmonic universes, we talked about the time cycles and how the Merkaba spirals sometimes come into vertical alignment. Normally, they're spiraling at different rates here, and they pass through each other a little bit, but they don't phase lock into a vertical alignment. During the times of the stellar activation, they do phase lock. Now if you take these and continue to bring them down together, you will blend harmonic universe 1 and harmonic universe 2. And you will create a star tetrahedron shape, energy field. This is where we get into the phases of a Merkaba vehicle. Because as these dimensions progressively merge together, and as the harmonics merge together, you'll be creating electromagnetic fields. This is what's going to happen to the planet. There are going to be certain configurations within the atmosphere and the outer bodies of the planet, the outer energy bodies, that are going to create star tetrahedron shapes. They're going to enter the phases of Merkaba vehicle, through which they're going to be able to pass through the natural magnetic repulsion zone that exists between harmonic universes. This is how the time acceleration is going to happen. Okay, I think we can go, let's see. Can we go to the next one? Yeah, we can go to the next one. Thanks, Bill. Okay. Now, this is something that I don't know if anybody else has right now. I think this is kind of new for the planet material. These are called the Merkaba phases. Now, some people are working, and some people have been given information on building the Merkaba vehicle, and that's good. And I'm not sure what their teachings are, or if they teach about these, but this was all new to me when it was given to me, so I'll share with you what I've been taught. There are phases to building the Merkaba vehicle, and those phases correspond directly to that merger of the shields that I talked about, where we had the shield 1 and 2, the Earth's shield, entire shield coming together, and then into full alignment. First they go partially, then they go this way, then they merge totally. It's a merging of dimensional bands. It's created by opening the dimensional Merkaba fields. And what it creates is a configuration of harmonic Merkaba fields progressively merging. Now this stage, this phase of the Merkaba vehicle is called Hala. Hala phase is the blending of the first and second shield, which on a planetary level is the merging of Earth and Tara. On a personal level, it's the merging of the incarnate and the soul matrix. We'll get into that a little bit later, the structure of identity in relation to the multidimensional universe. Okay, so first of all, we're going to, the planet is going to enter the different stages of Hala phase Merkaba. The first stage is going to happen between 5/5/2000 and 6/2004. January 2000 begins the release of this cycle. This is when that tone that I talked about, it's called an interdimensional resonant tone, is struck in the Earth's core, which opens the Earth's energy fields to receive the stellar bridge. The stellar bridge will ground on 5/5/2000. When this occurs, a blending starts to happen between harmonic universe 1 and harmonic universe 2. First of all, it helps a little bit to understand about tones. The dimensions are stacked in groups of 3. The first is a bass tone, the second is an overtone, and the third is a resonant tone. When you understand the tones, you can understand what dimensions get sucked into each other. Now, in harmonic 1, D1 is a bass tone. When the merger of harmonic 1, harmonic universe 1, and harmonic universe 2 takes place, it will merge with the other bass tone, an octave up, which would be D4. So it's pretty easy to understand. You have D1, D4, then you have D7, and the next one. They would merge together. You would have D2, D5, D8. See the relationships there? Bass tone, overtone, and resonant tone. The bass tones will become one, and the overtones will become one. And the resonant tones will become one, and then they'll interact with each other, creating interdimensional resonant tones, through which the Merkaba vehicles are formed. But we don't have to understand tone. The tonal part of it can be very, very confusing unless you really, really like numbers and musical scales, because that's really what it's built on. But I like shapes better. I guess I must be a more visual person, because I handle diagrams of little triangles better than I do numerical calculations. So this is how I take it down. So basically, we will enter Hala phase. Earth will pass into stage 1 of Hala, which is the merger of D1, our first dimensional particle base, and D4, Tara's first dimensional particle base, but it's actually fourth dimensional, because Tara's in the next harmonica. Okay. That will create an energy field. It looks kind of like that. It's not quite yet a Merkaba field or a Merkaba vehicle. Stage 2 will occur when the D2 and D5 frequencies of the harmonics blend, and we get closer to merger with Tara. Our shields are starting to merge. If you can look at these circles here as planets, yes, but also as shields laying flat, I think you can get the idea of what the shields do. So they're coming into closer merger, that second stage of Hala. This creates something that looks a little bit more like what we're aiming for. It's because this is the beginning of the Hala vehicle, the Hala Merkaba vehicle. When this full blend happens, where finally dimension 3 and dimension 6 blend together, that's when you have full fusion between Earth and Tara's grid. That will occur in January of 2012. At this time, something called the Halls of Mente will open. The Halls of Mente were the ancient secret places that led to Tara and that led to our discovering the secrets of our race, of our origins, of our evolutionary design, what we're here for. The Halls of Mente were known about in Egypt, in ancient Egypt, because they used them as ascension portals when they were allowed by the higher races. So when this merger occurs between the grids of Earth and Tara, we will have opening of portals, of time portals, that if our DNA resonates high enough, if it has enough frequency in it, if we have enough strand activation, we'll be able to walk through. And if we don't, we won't even see them. Because to even see the areas where these doorways are open, you have to have a certain level of consciousness, depending on what level the doorway is. You have to be a full octave above the doorway in order to see it. You have to be one dimension above to see something is solid. So, if we're opening up fifth dimensional doorways, we'd have to attain sixth dimensional consciousness to see that it's solid. But we can get there because the Guardians are giving us a program by which we can build our Merkaba vehicle, which simultaneously activates our DNA strands, which allows us to see higher. And we will begin to see the worlds that the Terrans see. And the Terrans are us in the future. So, when we enter full Hala, which will be in 2012, the Merkaba vehicle around the Earth, that the Earth will be within, will be shaped something like this, except I was in a hurry this morning, and it's really supposed to be a star David, a star tetrahedron, but I was a little, I was half asleep and trying to get out the door, so we hopefully get here in time. But it is a star tetrahedron shape. It is a literal vehicle of light that is created around the planet. And when we go into Merkaba as individuals, this is what we're creating around our body. And there are certain ratios of spin between the two, between the electrical and the magnetic spirals. And some people who are teaching Merkaba teach those things. I don't have time to teach that level of information because we're trying to create a certain outcome, which is reach as many people as possible with the easiest steps as possible to create results. And the results we want to be able to create are teaching you how to develop your Merkaba vehicle so that when these transitions occur, if, as a collective, we can't stop the planet from going into things we don't want to see, at least we will know how to enter Merkaba and protect ourselves from those realities. So there are many different, I don't know how many, there's only a few people that I know of actually that are teaching Merkaba mechanics directly, where it was really their own understanding, not just learned from, a teacher. They have good programs, and the Flower Life program is a very good program for teaching these kind of things. I would suggest looking into those things as well. We will teach you certain things today. We will give you an exercise that we were just given to begin activating the Merkaba fields. But I'm not saying just do ours. I'm saying explore it because it's worth it. And as we go into this a little bit more, hopefully you can understand why it's worth learning to develop the skills of developing your Merkaba fields. These are part of your energy systems. And